Everything, and I mean absolutely everything, can change in a matter of seconds in this league. Think about it. A single snap of the football, a sudden, unexpected injury on a routine play, a microscopic split-second missed assignment in the fourth quarter of a playoff game when the lights are at their absolute brightest. The margins between raising a banner and going home completely empty-handed are terrifyingly thin. Welcome to NFL Nexus. I'm your host, and today we are presenting a deep dive explainer into the hidden, granular mechanics of championship roster building. If you're the type of fan who obsesses over the microscopic details, the tiny front office chess moves that separate the merely good from the absolutely legendary, you are in the right place. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment on what you thought down below. And if you want to truly support our deep dives, consider becoming a channel member. So today, we are looking squarely at the Houston Texans, a franchise that has rapidly, almost violently ascended the ranks of the NFL. But the architecture of a dynasty, it's never actually finished in the first round of the draft under the bright lights. No. It is forged in the shadows of the offseason. Let's unravel the tape. So you have to ask yourself this crucial question. What separates a playoff team from a true, undeniable dynasty? It is quite literally the most critical question a front office can ever ask themselves. When you look at the heavyweights, the teams that hoist the Lombardi Trophy year after year, the secret isn't just having a superstar quarterback or a flashy, highlight reel wide receiver. Everyone at the absolute top of the mountain has those pieces. The true separation happens right now. It happens in May. It happens in the quiet, seemingly insignificant transactions that go completely unnoticed by the casual observer. We are talking about the immense, suffocating gravity of off-season roster construction. This is a world where every single dollar against the salary cap and every single under-the-radar tryout is quite literally a matter of franchise survival. You see, the difference is found on the margins. The Houston Texans, right now, already have their core stars locked perfectly in place. They have their franchise quarterback, they have their game-breaking receivers, the foundation is poured. But in a league that is strictly, ruthlessly governed by a hard salary cap, having a good core isn't enough. True championship armor requires perfectly calculated tactical maneuvers to patch the remaining microscopic holes. And you have to do it using veteran minimum contracts and highly targeted acquisitions. It's like a 15-round heavyweight fight. When the fight goes to those final, exhausting championship rounds, it is the margins that decide who stands and who falls to the canvas. Today, in this explainer, we are examining two highly specific, under-the-radar maneuvers the Texans are exploring right at this very moment. Maneuvers that could literally be the absolute difference between a Super Bowl ring and a devastating, heartbreaking early exit. Part 1. Chasing Jadeveon Clowney. Okay, so let's dive into our first critical maneuver. And it's a big one. It involves the potential return of a prodigal son. We're shifting our focus to a name that absolutely echoes through the concrete halls of NRG Stadium, Jadeveon Clowney. You remember the hype, right? The former 2014 #1 overall draft pick began his NFL journey right there in Houston. He built an incredible resume of Pro Bowl and All-Pro level campaigns over his first 5 seasons with the franchise. Well now, 12 grueling years into his NFL career, the whispers of a dramatic reunion are suddenly growing louder and louder. NFL Network's Mike Garafolo recently dropped a crucial, fascinating piece of intelligence regarding the post-draft free agency market. He reported that Clowney has very recently changed agents. He moved over to Andy Ross of Upper Edge Management. Now listen closely. A change in representation in the month of May? That is almost always a precursor to a targeted, imminent strike. Garafolo noted, and I quote, "I gather that some of his former teams are interested in him. Let's see about Clowney here in the near future." Now, while the Texans weren't named explicitly in that breath, the geographic and strategic fit makes Houston an undeniable gravitational focal point. And the implications this has for opposing quarterbacks, they are absolutely terrifying. Now, you might be wondering, why in the world is a 33-year-old veteran drawing this level of covert, intense interest across the league? Well, the answer is right there in front of you. 8.5. That is the exact number of sacks Jadeveon Clowney recorded just last season with the Dallas Cowboys. Let me be perfectly clear. He is not some declining player just clinging to the ghosts of his past glories. Not even close. He is still an incredibly dangerous, highly lethal weapon on the defensive line. To put up 8.5 sacks in your 12th bruising season in the National Football League requires a relentless motor and an absolutely unparalleled physical pedigree. It proves without a shadow of a doubt that when he is deployed correctly, he is an absolute nightmare for opposing offensive tackles. Let's break down the sheer anatomy of that production, because this wasn't just some random flash in the pan. In 13 games played last season, where he was largely utilized as a highly specific rotational pass rushing piece off the edge, Clowney logged 41 combined tackles. That's solid. But the statistic that should genuinely send a chill down your spine, it's those 12 tackles for loss. Let's talk about what a tackle for loss actually means in a football game. A tackle for loss completely, utterly derails an offensive drive. It blows up the script. It forces offensive coordinators into desperate, predictable second and long situations where the pass rush can truly just pin their ears back and feast. This highly productive 13-game stat line from Dallas illustrates exactly why a seasoned, rotational pass rusher, someone who can set a violent edge and hunt the quarterback, is a highly, highly coveted asset. In this league, you desperately need players who can alter the underlying math of the game. Part 2. An elite defensive front. But to really understand this move, we have to zoom out and look at the larger picture. How exactly does a player like Jadeveon Clowney fit into the ecosystem of what Houston is already building? Because here's the thing, Houston isn't desperate for a savior on the defensive line. That's not what this is about. They're looking for a highly specific, calculated puzzle piece to complement an already terrifying defensive front. A front that is explicitly designed to suffocate the opposition from the opening kickoff to the final whistle. 30. That is the massive, jaw-dropping combined sack total of Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter from just last season. 30 sacks between just two players. It is an astronomical figure. It establishes the sheer, unadulterated dominance of Houston's starting edge duo. These guys are the apex predators of this defense. And when you have two edge rushers who instantly demand double teams and constantly collapse the pocket, you have the bedrock foundation of a championship defense. But, and this is a massive but, even apex predators have to rest. They need oxygen. And that, my friends, is exactly where the vulnerability lies. Which brings us to a glaring, flashing red siren on the Texans' current depth chart. I want you to contrast the elite, top-tier frontline talent of Anderson and Hunter with the dangerous depth vacuum that currently exists right behind them. Last season, Houston relied heavily, and I mean heavily, on veterans Danico Autry and Derek Barnett to maintain the defensive pressure when the starters inevitably needed a breather. But as we sit here today, Autry and Barnett are gone, they've left the building. And crucially, throughout all 7 rounds and 8 total picks in the recent NFL draft, the Houston Texans did not draft a single edge rusher to replace them. Not one. They spent their valuable draft capital fortifying the secondary and building up the offensive line, leaving that edge void entirely, completely untouched. It is a massive, calculated gamble by the front office, and right now the clock is loudly ticking to find a solution. So what does this all mean? It means that adding Jadeveon Clowney isn't about finding some long-term cornerstone to build the franchise around for the next decade. No, it is entirely about securing a premium quality finishing touch. It's about bringing in a 33-year-old rotational veteran to maximize an already elite pass rush. Think about the strategy here. They don't need him to go out there and play 100% of the snaps. That would be a mistake. They need him to play the 15 to 20 most critical, high-leverage snaps of the football game. Picture a fresh, fully energized Jadeveon Clowney pinning his ears back on 3rd and long in the 4th quarter, surrounded by a significantly stronger supporting cast than he even had in Dallas. That, right there, is exactly how you slam the door shut on elite quarterbacks. That is how you close out grueling playoff games. Part 3. The QB Room Chess Match. Now we're going to pivot away from the violent, muddy trenches and look at the absolute cerebral command center of the football team. Because while the sports media focuses all their cameras on the superstars, front offices are up late at night agonizing over the absolute bottom of the roster. Let's map out the current quarterback hierarchy in Houston. C.J. Stroud is the unquestioned king of this roster. He's locked in, his 5th-year option has been happily accepted, and he is the franchise. Right behind him, you have Davis Mills, who has really excelled in his role as a steady, reliable QB2. But I want you to focus all your attention on the QB3 spot, the emergency quarterback. Last year, that specific role was held by 2025 Day 3 draft pick Graham Mertz, a guy who played exactly 0 snaps his rookie year. Enter Clayton Tune. He's a 3-year NFL veteran who spent his first 2 years out in the desert with the Cardinals and last season with the Green Bay Packers. The Texans are quietly hosting Tune for an under-the-radar rookie minicamp tryout, which essentially creates a direct, high-stakes battle for that vital emergency spot on the 90-man roster. This isn't just a tryout. It's an audition that carries the heavy weight of being a franchise's absolute last resort insurance policy. Let's compare these two resumes side by side so you can really see the exact stakes of this late off-season roster battle. On the right side, you've got Graham Mertz, totally unproven in live regular season NFL action, 0 rookie snaps. It's all theory with him right now. On the left side, you have Clayton Tune, Now, he hasn't played a massive amount of football, but the experience he does have is profoundly real. He's a 3-year veteran. He's been active on game days for 15 games. He has 2 actual NFL starts under his belt. He's thrown 38 regular season pass attempts. Look back at last season. In Week 18, Tune was forced into action while Jordan Love rested. And he didn't just step into an easy situation. He stepped in against a highly complex, aggressive, blitz-heavy Minnesota Vikings defense orchestrated by actual defensive mastermind Brian Flores. If you know football, you know Flores' defense is designed to confuse and destroy quarterbacks. In that game, Tune completed 7 of 15 passes for 42 yards and an interception. Look, it's not a glamorous stat line, no one is putting that in the Hall of Fame, but it is real, live NFL speed against a top-tier defensive mind. In a genuine crisis situation, having that tiny sliver of experience, knowing what it feels like to navigate muddy pockets and decipher complex pressure packages, that is literally like finding oxygen in a vacuum. But wait, because this builds into something even deeper. There is a hidden, underlying psychological layer to this tryout that absolutely cannot be ignored. We have to talk about the University of Houston connection. Long before the NFL, Clayton Tune was the starting quarterback for the Houston Cougars. And do you know who his primary weapon was during that time? Current Texans superstar wide receiver Tank Dell. For 3 pivotal years, from 2020 to 2022, Clayton Tune and Tank Dell shared a locker room. They shared the practice field, and they developed an incredibly intricate, unspoken chemistry. They spent 3 full collegiate seasons running the same concepts, mastering each other's timing, and learning each other's tendencies before ever making the jump to the pros.
Listen, you simply cannot underestimate the immense power of this kind of micro-decision. If your QB3 is forced to enter a live game, it means absolute disaster has struck your franchise. At that moment, the playbook immediately shrinks. Pass protections inevitably start to break down. Chaos reigns. In that terrifying worst-case scenario, having a reunion that brings immediate psychological comfort is utterly invaluable. Think about it. Knowing exactly where Tank Dell is going to be on a hot route or anticipating his sight adjust before he even breaks his stem, that kind of deep-rooted familiarity is the ultimate lifeboat in a violent storm. Bringing in an emergency quarterback who already possesses a deep, pre-existing connection with one of your primary weapons is just calculated brilliance from the front office. There is absolutely no doubt that Tank Dell would be completely 100% on board with reuniting with his college quarterback.
Part 4, Scaling the AFC Arms Race. So we have to zoom out now. We need to examine the massive scale and the true consequence of these seemingly minor, everyday transactions. If you look at them in a vacuum, sure, a tryout for a third-string quarterback or a potential short-term deal for a 33-year-old rotational pass rusher, they just look like footnotes in a transaction log. But in the modern NFL, they are the vital, load-bearing building blocks of a championship war machine. I really want you to ask yourself this. Why do minor tryouts and veteran whispers matter so much in May? Why is a team with a solidified core, a bona fide superstar quarterback, and a terrifying starting edge duo sweating over the absolute bottom of their depth chart right now? I'll tell you why. Because the war is won before the battles are ever fought. By the time December and January roll around, the free agent market is a barren, empty wasteland. If you wait until you are already bleeding to start looking for a bandage, you have already lost the season. The reality is this. In the AFC, depth is the ultimate currency. There's no other way to say it. The American Football Conference right now is an absolute meat grinder. If you want to make it to the Super Bowl, you are navigating a brutal gauntlet of elite, Hall of Fame caliber quarterbacks. We're talking Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson. Week in and week out, there is zero room for error. Surviving this brutal, relentless arms race requires ironclad insurance policies at every single level of your 90-man roster. You absolutely cannot rely solely on your starting 22. It's impossible. Injuries are a mathematical certainty in this sport. Total physical exhaustion is inevitable. When the starters eventually falter, the next man up cannot just be a warm body. They must be capable of executing the exact same standard of violence and precision. Because at the end of the day, a single snap can change NFL history. That is the chilling, inescapable reality of this sport we love. Having a seasoned veteran edge rusher like Jadeveon Clowney available to pin his ears back in the bleeding fourth quarter of a tight playoff game, or having a trusted emergency quarterback like Clayton Tune who shares a literal telepathic bond with your star receiver. These aren't just minor details for a spreadsheet. They are the tactical fail-safes that prevent an entire season from collapsing into dust. The dynasty, the legacy, it is built right here on the margins. But it really begs the ultimate question. If the Houston Texans actually manage to secure these final 2 pieces, is there a single roster in the entire AFC capable of stopping them? Thank you so much for diving into the details with us today on this explainer here on NFL Nexus. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and let us know down in the comments if you think these subtle moves will be enough to secure the ultimate prize for Houston. Until next time.